Serie A's rising stars. The Serie A has a rising team that many people outside the Italian league aren't noticing, and it's Como. But how did Como get to where they are right now? Because I had no clue who they were before last season, and the only reason I knew anything about them in the first place was because Cesc Fabregas was in charge and Rafael Varane signed for them. Around a year later, it turns out they're more than just a Cesc Fabregas and Varane club, so let's dive into it. We'll go back to 2016. Following a bankruptcy to the club, they had to start all the way from Serie D. A tragic time for the club, and many probably thought that's the end of them getting anywhere near the levels they were at before, which was mainly Serie C, as they spent 6 consecutive seasons there, but they did have one season in Serie B, but unfortunately finished bottom and had 3 different managers. They already won the best of clubs, but it was still harsh for a club to go through what they went through. They went all the way to Serie D. Now here's the thing about the Italian lower divisions. They're more complicated than you'd expect. It's not as smooth as the lower leagues in England, France, Germany. The Serie D is split into 9 different leagues, and only one team from each league can gain promotion. So it wasn't going to be an easy job at all for Como to gain promotion from Serie D, especially with the club having no funds remaining and a lot of the players leaving. Como spent 2 seasons in the Serie D, however, only two, as they were bought out in 2019 by a UK-based company called Cent Entertainment. Well, it was bought through them, but the actual owners are billionaire brothers Hartono, if that's how you say their name. All of a sudden, Como became one of the richest clubs in Italy. They won the Serie D, breaking records for the most points, from a Serie D side. Como were unable to gain back-to-back promotion, but in their second season in the Serie C, they managed to gain promotion to Serie B. So in 3 years, 2 promotions. They were suddenly back where they were not too long ago, but it almost seemed unthinkable at one point that Como could reach this stage again. However, the last time they were in Serie B, it was a disaster, as mentioned earlier in the video. They were relegated, but the issue was they were bottom from the first match week until the very last, so the club knew it was going to be a challenge. The first season back in Serie B for Como wasn't a disaster like their last campaign in the Serie B. The club finished 13th, safe from relegation, and not a bad first season back in Serie B. Majority of people knew the owner's plans was to reach the top division of Italy, Serie A, but these were small positive steps in the right direction. The club were hoping to improve the next season, trying to get near promotion, whether that's through playoffs or automatic promotion. The 2022-23 season arrives and is similar again to the year prior. Como finished 13th again, not ideal, but not the worst thing for the club. You have to remember, not too long ago, these lot were in Serie D, bankrupt, and now 2 seasons finishing mid-table in the Serie B is still positive for the club, but maybe getting out of this league into the first division of Italy is going to be harder than expected. The 2023-24 season arrives. In this season, November specifically, we saw a big change to the club. We saw the introduction of Cesc Fabregas, who was in charge of the team for a while, but due to not finishing his coaching badges, it didn't last too long, and he was demoted to assistant manager, or well, on paper at least. This was a bit similar to Ruben Amorim a couple years ago at Braga. It was to avoid the club being fined. Let me give you an example in recent years that we've had of this. Will Still for Rems a couple years ago. He didn't have his coaching badges, and they were getting fined every single game he was in charge. So Como just decided to make him assistant manager, so on paper, he wasn't the actual manager, but we all knew he was managing Como. Como managed to gain promotion to the Serie A through automatic qualification, finishing second place with 73 points. The owners had achieved their goal within just 5 seasons. Very impressive, and all of a sudden, Como was starting to capture the eye of people outside of Italy. This is where the club had a big turning point. The board had the funds to back the club because the Serie A isn't an easy league to survive in whatsoever. I actually think it's quite underrated. There's a lot of top quality teams, and it feels like there's a big match on every week in Italy whenever I tune in. The first thing they did was officially make Fabregas the manager. He completed his coaching courses and they decided to back him. So let's look at their signings from the 2024-25 season and let's see how they did. The biggest names they managed to sign was Rafael Varane, Nico Paf, Alberto Moreno, and more. But unfortunately, the biggest of them all, Rafael Varane, picked up a big injury and he decided to retire from football before the season even started. Here's the image of all the players they managed to sign. As you can see, Fabregas got decent backing. The backing was there, the squad was decent, but here's the issue. We've seen so many teams in the past buy a lot of players and struggle to make a team out of it. It wasn't going to be an easy task for Fabregas, but he did manage to get his hands on some quality players, and players that were world class and become managers, for some reason, something about them just screams aura. Como managed to finish 10th in their first season back in Serie A. After 21 years away from the first division, they managed to have a successful year and were impressing a lot of people around the world. Rightfully so. They played an attractive brand of football and rose from the lower leagues of football to the top. We all love to see something like this. Well, I do personally, and I'm sure majority of you do too. There was a slight issue, however. Their star man Nico Paf was being considered by Real Madrid as they had a really cheap buyback clause for him, and Fabregas had been approached by Inter Milan. The two main pieces of Como were being wanted by European giants, and it was going to be incredibly hard to keep both of them. How could Fabregas turn down arguably the best team in Italy, and Nico Paf, if Madrid do decide to activate the buyback clause, how could he turn them down? After all, he was a huge part of the academy team, and Madrid are, in my opinion, the greatest team of all time. However, Fabregas decided to stay at Como, and Madrid decided to look at Nico Paf the next season. So, it wasn't bad for the club. They managed to keep their two most important pieces, which is amazing news for them. So, what did the owners go and do? Spend even more, improving the squad for the next season. Here's all of Como's signings in the 2025-26 season. They spent €107.45 million, and some of the players they pulled, I don't know how they managed it. For example, Nicholas Kuhn. He was scoring against Bayern Munich in the round of 32, against them at home. For my people that play Football Manager, you know about Baturina. I don't need to tell you twice about this guy. He's just class. To also get Morata and Diego Carlos on a loan, they were secretly building an underrated squad. For a team who was in Serie D 6 years ago to now having a Euros winner starting striker up top, unbelievable. I remember I saw all the signings they made and I was excited for the season for them. I put them down as surprise top 4 packages and even in the title race for the first half of the season, but slowly falling off towards the end and just about getting top 4. I didn't see anyone else who held this opinion. I don't know, did you? Let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, they're somewhat proving me right. They most recently drew to 0-0. Sorry, I don't even know what I'm saying. They most recently drew to Serie A holders Napoli 0-0, and they could have easily won the game. In my opinion, they were the more dominant side, and unfortunately, Morata missed a penalty. They're currently 4 points off top after 11 games, and if they keep this form up, they could well and truly get Champions League. But the question is, if they do manage to get Champions League, will they be what is going on? Sorry, will they be able to hold their status? We've seen so many clubs in the last couple of years in the top 5 leagues manage to make Champions League football unexpectedly, but don't hit those same heights again, completely falling off the year after. Things look promising for the Italian club, from bankruptcy to potential top 4. That's the end of the video, everyone. Thank you for